has just been tabled. All right, let's then quickly get into the breaking news this moment, and that is that the economy has performed worse than expected in the fourth quarter, contracting by 1.3%. 7 of the 10 industries recorded a decline in economic activity in the fourth quarter, with both agriculture and mining being the biggest contributors to the contraction. Let's speak now to Newsroom Africa's business editor, Xolani Mbanjwa, who is with me in studio. It is a depressing picture, and 7 out of 10 industries performing worse than expected. Is it obvious that load shedding is the biggest culprit here?
The biggest culprit by far. And if you saw the previews that we've been having from various economists, they will tell you that this was expected. And they'll also tell you that this is historical numbers. This is historical data for the last 3 months of 2022. And they were expecting a contraction, and they actually warned that the first quarter, the first 3 months of 2023, we're going to experience another contraction, basically saying that we could be entering a recession in South Africa economically. And this is actually proven by what the data from SSA has said today, putting it out there that the 1.3 contraction is worse than expected. And if you look at the sectors, it's the sectors that would normally contribute positively, and their input would be positive. But this is, the fears of a recession in South Africa are now here, and it's one of those where we have been speaking last year of a possibility of a global recession, and the likes of the IMF, the World Bank, World Economic Forum were saying perhaps for the developed world, we won't see some of the developed countries, we will not see a recession, but definitely in emerging and in developing economies, we will see a sparse economic contraction, which could lead to a recession. And unfortunately, it seems South Africa is among the list of those countries that is going to, that is staring at a recession full on in the face.
Well, we're going to drill deeper into the different sectors that we are speaking about, but let's deal with that technicality. So these are fourth quarter GDP figures. The first quarter of 2023, I'm sure that's going to come in the not too distant future. If that also is a negative growth, then we are in a technical recession.
Yes.
Am I correct in that assumption?
You're absolutely correct. And if the next quarter definitely comes into the picture of another contraction, then we're in a recession, definitely knee-deep in a recession. And that's definitely where we do not want to find ourselves as a country.
And that's where phrases, if indeed the second quarter of 2023 is also a negative growth, as you say, then we are possibly delving, or we are possibly into a depression, as some economists would use.
Yes, they don't. You're seeing me shift. You're seeing me shift because not a lot of people want to use the word depression because that's alarmist. But recession is an everyday word that we've been talking about the whole year with an expected, a recession. But depression is, a bit of a stretch. But for some developed countries, it is a possibility. This is why just yesterday, the International Monetary Fund announced that they are raising the borrowing limits for countries that have reached the borrowing limits, because there are so many economies that are in trouble. And we are in trouble as a country, and you will see the markets react, you will see the rand react negatively today. So even the IMF raising the borrowing limits tells you that they are saying something that economies just like ours are going to be in a lot of trouble, and they might want to prop up their national purse and their finances by borrowing some more. So they've raised those limits temporarily to allow countries that are worse off to come and borrow money, because this is the recession is staring us in the face right now.
Then let's go into these different sectors. So mining and agriculture is top of the list. How badly did they do?
They did terribly bad. If you think about the third quarter of 2022, the previous quarter to the one that SSA is reporting about today, the economy grew by 1.6%. This is a contraction of 1.3%. And if you're taking into consideration those two sectors, mining and quarrying industry decreased by 3.2%, and they contributed minus 0.1 percentage points to GDP growth. So that is a serious contraction in what would otherwise be a busy quarter, which is the fourth quarter. It's always busy. We saw the numbers last week from the unemployment figures, with 169,000 jobs being added to the economy, but that did not mean anything, obviously, when you look at this particular set of data. Agriculture, forestry, and fishing decreased by 3.3% in that fourth quarter, and they also contributed minus 0.1 of a percentage point to economic growth, which is a negative contribution. But they are not the only ones. Manufacturing decreasing by 0.9% in that quarter, also contributing a minus 0.1 percentage point of GDP growth. Finance, real estate, business decreasing by 2.3% in that particular quarter as well. Because they contribute so much, they contributed even more in the contraction, in the negative contribution of a minus 0.6 percentage points. These are sectors that are really big for the country, and you're looking at finance, real estate, and business services industry, looking at banks, you're looking at insurance companies, you're looking at really those major employers, and they have not done well at all. Usually you talk about agriculture as having a positive. There were points in the past 2 years, there were quarters in the past 2 years where agriculture was the only one that was the only sector that would contribute positively. All the other ones would contribute negatively, they would decrease. But looking at it now, agriculture right through, with forestry and fishing not doing so well, it all goes back to load shedding. And as long as we have this problem, this crisis with us, we should always expect to see such numbers.
And I suppose it emphasizes the point, just the kind of pressure that the new Minister of Electricity comes with, because yesterday, a very interesting conversation I had with the CEO of Business Unity South Africa, Kes Kuvadia, who says, look, while load shedding is indeed one of the major challenges that the country faces, but for them, what's making it worse as a business community is Transnet, which has been problematic in terms of the logistics, moving goods and services. He is clear that for them, that is the biggest challenge when it comes to reigniting the performance of this economy. So I suppose that's where mining will probably factor in, and as I dare say, the agricultural sector, because also there are massive exports that go out.
You're 100% correct, because we export a lot of citrus as a country, one of the biggest exporters of agricultural commodities to the rest of the world. And you just have to speak to, yesterday I spoke to Mike Schmidt, who is the CEO of African Rainbow Minerals. Now their earnings actually grew by 40%. They are making money. But he said to me, we could be making more had it not been for the logistical challenges that we have. Although he did not want to commit to what the Minerals Council, the body that represents the mining sector, although he did not want to commit to the calls by the Minerals Council for Portia Derby to go as CEO, because many people are against those calls, many people are for those calls, because the Minerals Council has been asked, why are you asking for Portia Derby as CEO of Transnet to actually go? Why didn't you ask for Andre de Ruyter to go? You see the double standards there clearly. He was also very clear that they are having to do things very differently because of the logistical challenges when it comes to Transnet. And you see this in the data that was released today in terms of exports. Our exports are actually down, and if I can just find net exports contributed negatively to growth in the expenditure in the fourth quarter. Exports of goods and services decreased by 4.8%, and that is a major contributor to negative growth in the country for the fourth quarter. And imports of goods and services also decreased by 0.8%. So not only are our exports decreasing, but also our imports are decreasing as well. But it's other issues that have impacted on Transnet. There's been floods. You remember there was a strike, and the strike, the backlogs from the strike take a long time to actually sort out. So that's where we are right now, that Transnet is trying, but you're absolutely right. Transnet is another major bottleneck to economic activity. But even households are spending less money. So household final consumption expenditure is actually also down. And when you look at it, total gross fixed capital formation, which is investments, they increased by 1.3%. And we always talk about investments decreasing in the previous quarters, Oli. We've always been talking about how bad it's been doing in the past 4 or 5 years, but they've done well. But when it comes to how much people, consumers, how much money consumers have in the pocket for goods and services, food, they have spent less money. And you can say that many people are spending less on electronics and other things because they are considering load shedding as well.
Disposable income.
Yes.
Let's conclude the conversation with the unemployment picture. Not so long ago, we're talking about a positive picture that had come because the fourth quarter, there are those informal jobs or short-term jobs that come up in the December period. And you did say, because it was you I was talking to, you did say that that picture, not really painting a realistic picture of where things are. So with the economy at the state that it is in right now, that unemployment picture probably is going to get worse as the months go.
Yes, if you look at what Peter Worthington, the economist at ABSA Corporate and Investment Banking, said to us, he was saying when the economy grows by 1.5%, employment increases by 1%. But our population growth is at about 1.6% annually. So the economy, for anybody knows this, most people know this, for the economy of a country to do well, the economic growth should be at the same level as the population growth, at least so that employment can actually catch up.
Yeah.
But in the first quarter, you're absolutely right. We're expecting a decrease in unemployment just looking at the numbers that we have today.
Yeah. Look, we were meant to take sports. I'm going to squeeze Benjamin out. You should see the happiness in his face. We're not going to show you that picture because we're talking such a serious issue here. I want to conclude the conversation with the unemployment picture, Xolani. I was reading the article by Duma Kubule this morning on the Business Day, and I think the title goes something along the lines that the South African government does not care about young people, the future of young people in this country. And he's talking exactly the issue of unemployment, but he's using very worrying language, which was a language used, by the way, when you were headed to Davos, because there was a very important report that came out ahead of that, that was warning about the state of the world at the moment, given the rising cost of living. Well, Duma Kubule talks about a wave of protests that we could start seeing, but he actually takes us back to the 2010-2011 period, the Arab Spring.
Yes.
And he says, we are possibly going to experience something akin to the youth uprising of '76 or something akin to the Arab Spring. Is that an exaggeration when he tries to paint a picture of youth unemployment in the country? Because these are people who have nothing to do, and they're loitering the streets, which then contributes to the issue of drug abuse and then crime.
He's on the money because we've covered this story before with Allianz, the global insurance firm that has a list. It has a list that it refurbishes every 3 months about the countries that are most susceptible to uprising, to those kind of riots. And South Africa is top 10. Because of the high cost of living, high unemployment, no prospects. Just looking at the number of people who are not in education, training, or any form of activity in this country is astounding, almost 50%. So he's on the money on that, and we have talked about that in this country, that we are on those lists where the world is saying, watch out, be careful, South Africa, you are most susceptible in the world to have those Arab Springs.
Mbandra, thank you very much for that sobering report. Well, that's the reality. And as we close the show this hour, it is a depressing picture indeed on the issue of where our economy is right now. The pressure couldn't be any more for government. Things have got to be sorted out and sorted out fast. That's where we end it for today. Duduzile Ramela up next with your daytime updates. I'm back with you at 9 tomorrow. Thank you for watching.